everybody. Welcome to Chasing Faith. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Week 3 of your 3 wise women.
Yes. Lutheran minister turned politician.
I know, and she's a crazy story. And of course, what I remember most about this is you and I normally record at a certain time, and I didn't check, and it was an hour earlier. So, so if I look even more panicked and with less makeup, everyone will understand.
That's funny.
I actually started looking at my notes like an hour beforehand and realized it was 2 minutes beforehand. But I was really happy to speak to Sarah. And you were going to play some music first, I thought. Something you've been listening to.
Okay. I thought this was interesting over the holidays. I know that Alanis Morissette recorded a version of Ave Maria, and she dedicated it to her grandmother. And I thought that was really interesting because, you know, she's known for rage rock.
Yeah.
And then for her to have this kind of other side, because we're all multifaceted people. So
she's mellowed a little bit. I saw her perform after the Woolsey fire in Malibu. So that was at least 3 major fires ago. And she did a concert afterwards for people of Malibu and to raise money. And it was lovely.
We'll take a listen to that.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Maria gratia plena, Maria gratia plena, Ave, Ave Dominus, Dominus tuum.
So apparently Alanis has a tradition of releasing songs every holiday season. This year it was Ave Maria. She said on Instagram that it's the song soothes, uplifts, and connects her with her grandmother. So, Dorothy, I just thought of this. You know, you were talking about the Woolsey fire, but you just went through it's been 1 year since the Palisades fire.
No.
How are you feeling?
You know, I mean, we're fine because, as you know, our house is still standing. My neighborhood is decimated, but our house is still being cleaned and still standing. Still being cleaned. It's not crazy. It's been a year. But you know what was really hard? Christmas, I think for people, not just not being in your home, which obviously is the biggest thing, but what I heard the most from people, not having their Christmas ornaments, like things their kids made, you know, in kindergarten. And gosh, I could get emotional. And I have that stuff, and I don't know if it could be cleaned or not, but it's still there, you know, sitting in my house. And just for people who, you know, it's just your memories.
Yeah, it's so hard. And it is remarkable that a year later, people are still displaced. I mean, even the people like our house in LA is rented to a couple whose house was damaged in the fire, but they don't think they're going to be back until, you know, May.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. As you know, we've moved around quite a bit, but we are here in what my husband calls the parking garage with all the cement. But I think it's cool.
Well, I'm glad you're, you know, okay, and hopefully you'll be back in your house soon.
I mean, we're okay. You know, we're okay. That house is still there. I drive by it and wave to it. Okay, so our third powerhouse woman.
As we said, Sarah Trone Garriott was a hospital chaplain, Lutheran minister. She's currently in the Iowa State Senate and is running for Congress in Iowa's 3rd district. She says she's running to continue her life's calling.
First, we have to get her elected, right? So she can do more good.
Yes.
Sarah, welcome. You know how we never used to talk about religion or politics, and now that's all we talk about? And I
Yeah.
feel like that is the intersection of your life. So running for Congress, when I'm sure you know right now, a lot of people are retiring from Congress. I'm sure I'm not telling you something you don't know. But running for Congress at this moment in time with your Christian beliefs as a Democrat, got to be interesting.
So I joke about it all the time that if you can't talk about religion and politics in polite company, there's nothing I could say. But I think that faith and politics, they both speak to how people live together. And so they should have something to say to each other. And it's very important that we bring our whole selves into our public work. And my values, my beliefs are rooted in my Christian faith. And that's been part of my life since I started running in 2020. So I've been serving in the state Senate since 2020. And so this isn't new territory for me. And I'm often trying to help other folks who are people of faith navigate how do I be a person of faith in the public space. And so it's something I've been grappling with, struggling with, trying to define for myself for years.
I probably, as a reporter, somehow I never covered a political campaign, and I probably have watched West Wing 500 times. But just for a moment, purely to talk about politics, is that what it is? Is it like 24 hours of bad junk food on a bus, meeting 10,000 people for 1 second, to trying to get your point across?
It is a lot of running around. So it's very similar to my work in ministry. I was a hospital
Is it?
chaplain, I was a parish minister. And so it's all about showing up and connecting with people. It's about being present in a lot of different contexts for a lot of different folks. And so that means that it's just day and night. There's always something going on, something I want to be part of, and just a lot of opportunities to connect with folks. And so I try to limit the junk food, which is also an occupational hazard for ministers. We always have to try to refuse all the
Is
cookies
it?
when we go
Oh,
visit
okay. All
somebody.
right.
Um, and and it's really important to try to pace yourself so that you can be at your best when you're showing up for the community, because it can be emotional, it can be hard, it can be really exhausting. But my life has been like this for years. My work is all the time and all over the place. And in politics, to campaign, to show up as an elected leader, it takes a lot of those same skills.
I can see that, but I feel like as a chaplain and as a congregational pastor, you have really good work that seems that would be very rewarding. And then you jumped into Iowa politics, and that seems like, well, I'm sure that is rewarding, but it seems that it could get messy very
Messy.
quickly. So how do
Well,
you deal with that?
being a parish pastor is very political. If you've ever been part of a church community, you know how challenging it can be to make decisions as a community, how angry people can get, how strongly held feelings can be. And so I have a lot of experience navigating some tricky situations. But for me, in every situation, there's always opportunities. So when I was a chaplain in the hospital, even in the very worst moments, there was always something you could do to make the situation better. And there is a lot of ickiness with politics, but there's also lots of wonderful people who work very hard. They're motivated by the right things, they care about their communities. And it's a great opportunity to help people. There are so many resources in our government to work together to solve big problems. And so I love finding those opportunities and being able to show up for people in their moments and make the systems work better, work as they should.
I think it's an overused phrase. People say, I truly can't imagine, but honest to God, I truly cannot imagine what it would be like to be a chaplain at a children's hospital.
Yes, it was a pretty stressful time in my life. I know that I had, I think, some secondary PTSD from some of the experiences, and it wasn't something I could do for the long haul. So I served as a chaplain. I worked nights, weekends while I was in seminary for 2 years, and it takes a lot of energy to show up because it was a high acuity place. All of the worst case situations, the most challenging um, needs, they all came to that hospital. And when you're working with children, it adds a whole level of emotion to it. The families, and how deeply the staff, everybody in that hospital community cares for their patients, because they really take that work to heart. And there were always opportunities to do really important, powerful things, but it wasn't something I could do for the long haul because it was just really hard. A lot of time it takes a very special person who can manage to keep showing up um, in those really challenging situations year after year.
Tell us about your call to the ministry. What was that process like? How did you know this was your life's work?
So I didn't, and it's not something I sought out, but I was an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer in Gallup, New Mexico. Right after college, I headed down to Gallup to work for a legal aid program on a domestic violence project. I honestly thought I wanted to be an attorney. And what I found in that work was actually a lot of religious issues kept coming up from folks who worked with um, clients in the courts in the domestic violence shelter, from people who had survived abuse, that they would go to their faith communities to seek help and they'd be blamed for their abuse, or they'd hear really bad
Mm.
theology that would become an obstacle for them. And so the question that I needed to answer is how can I help in this situation? And so I ended up coordinating a conference for faith leaders on domestic violence because I wanted to help those leaders do a better job for their community. And in that, I found an opportunity. And so I thought, well, maybe this will become my career. I will help ministers do a better job. But I realized I had all these questions about my own faith and what were the good things about my Christian faith. There were resources for people, for healing, for new life. And I didn't know how to answer that. So I ended up going to graduate school where I met a bunch of folks becoming ministers, and getting to know young people who were going down that path made me realize that that could be something that I could do. But I ended up spending time as a hospital chaplain to feel that out a little bit more. I wasn't sure if that was really what I was called to be. And doing the hospital chaplaincy work made me realize that I had the resources within me. I had the strength and the courage to be present for people, and that it could be my calling. And my calling continues to change from situation to situation, year to year. But it led me to the parish and becoming an ordained minister.
We've all been in situations where we know we're supposed to say something comforting to someone, but I can't even imagine for you, dealing with domestic violence, sexual abuse, children who are dying. Where does that come from? Knowing how to begin to talk to someone, how to begin to help someone heal.
Well, there was a lot of preparation that I went through to work in the hospital. And so I did 4 units of a program called Clinical Pastoral Education. And so they help you reflect on your own feelings in the moment, how to manage that, so that you're not just jumping to trying to make yourself feel more comfortable, that you're really being
Mhm.
present for the people as they need it. So we have this saying in chaplaincy, don't just do something, stand there. And the idea is that the presence is what matters the most. We often want to say something to try to
Mhm.
make things better, but often what people just need is to not be alone, to feel
Uh,
supported. And I think that it's really important in every kind of work I've done that you don't jump to, I'm going to try to say something to make everyone feel more comfortable, make things feel better, but that I'm going to be
Which is, of
present.
course, what we all want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And often it's because your own discomfort is pushing you to try to make things feel better. But often what's the most helpful is showing up for people, um, and giving them space to feel their pain. Really paying attention. What are the problems here? What could
Yeah.
be a helpful solution? Who are the folks who need support? So, as a parish pastor, as a hospital chaplain, in my state legislative work, in my nonprofit work, these skills have really helped me to show up for the community and pay attention. So I'm not just jumping to a conclusion, but really thinking about what's going to serve my community the best here.
So how did those things like, you're dealing with sexual assault victims and children who were with terminal illnesses. How did those challenge your faith and deepen your faith?
Well, just to to be aware that we are able to do so much more than we realize. And there are all these gifts that show up even in the challenging times of our lives has been really helpful for me. And like I had said before, um, to know that even in the worst moments when the worst thing is going to happen and there's nothing you can do to stop that, you can always make things better in some way. So I find a lot of hope in that. In those moments of challenge, in those moments of feeling out of place, or um, in the midst of conflict, God's presence shows up. We don't always see it in the moment. Sometimes it's in retrospect that you can see it later. But it's been in the most challenging times of my life that I really feel God's presence and have come to find God's calling for my work and for my future. I like to say that I'm a professional stranger. So in a lot of the different kinds of work I've done over the years, I've had to walk into these moments that are really challenging, engage with communities of people that they're just different or I feel uncomfortable or out of place. And in the practice of doing that, I'm better able to show up for my community and offer welcome to others because I know what it's like to be welcomed as a stranger and have the resources to manage when that presence is rejected or refused, and to be aware of how I need to be opening my life and my heart to other folks.
I can't imagine that there's a moment or a particular story, but I'm thinking that all of this has to have changed you as a human being.
Definitely. I think we learn a lot from our experiences. One of the great things about the chaplaincy training program and about ministry itself is that you're called to reflect on your experiences and make meaning from them. And so when I look back at some of those moments and tell the story, I'm better able to understand, more things about myself and grow as a person. In the moment, we don't always know what's the right thing to do. I think about the last night I was in the hospital working as a chaplain. I was heading off the next week to move to my first parish and start serving as a minister in rural Virginia. And I had to get through one more night at the hospital, and there was a young man dying of cancer, and his family was there with him. And he was well known to the folks in the hospital. He had spent a lot of time at that hospital, just beloved by the staff, the nurses. It was really hard for everyone. And everyone was providing such great support for the family. And I was like, what is my role in this moment? And his little sister was there. And so what I did with her for hours is we played My Little Ponies because she needed somebody to help her feel comfortable and welcome and be present in the moment. The parents needed to know that she was okay so that they could really focus on their son. And so you don't think of My Little Ponies as an important pastoral skill, but that in the moment, that's what was needed. And just having the humility to be like, sometimes life calls you to do kind of silly, ridiculous things. But maybe that's what you need in the moment to help people be present for one another. And that humility has just been really important to me to be able to step into these new roles, to take on new challenges. Because there will be times I just don't know what I'm called to do in the moment or how I'm supposed to be. But we find our way along, and sometimes just acknowledging, yeah, we just got to be human together. That is just the most important thing you can do.
I don't know if you talk about this on the campaign trail, but do you feel like you actually hear the voice of God? Is it a knowing? Is it actually hearing?
No, it's like there are different ways to discern what I'm called to do or who I'm called to be in the moment. So one of the things that's really important to me as a person of faith and as a minister is I preach on the weekends. And so working in
That
my
you're busy.
I have a lot of part-time jobs. So I'm a state senator. I work for a nonprofit food pantry network. I am an ordained minister. And so on the weekends, I'll go preach at any church that'll have a lady pastor in the pulpit. And so, and I joke because I'm a Lutheran, I'm like the universal donor for Methodist, Presbyterians, UCC, Episcopalians. Like we all work together, and I can do their stuff and can figure it out. And preaching is a really important piece of that for me. It's an opportunity to connect with the community in just a very different way and remind myself what's important in my life. And when I preach, I don't just show up and do the same sermon everywhere I go. If they are doing the lectionary, that series of readings, that 3-year cycle, I will do whatever is assigned for the weekend. If they're doing a series, I will do that. And so I often have to write a brand new sermon, which is a really important spiritual practice for me. And I get to dig into that word. And like life, you get handed things and you've got to deal with it and make meaning from it. And so that's why I love when I'm preaching, because I never know what I'm going to end up having to preach on or do that week. But it always seems to speak to my life. It always seems to help me understand things in a different way. And I often say, when I'm preaching, I'm often talking to myself first and foremost. And I hope other people get something out of it. But one of the ways that I approach scripture and preaching is I take the scripture, usually it's the gospel lesson, a paragraph, or maybe even like 20 verses, whatever it is, assigned, and I will memorize it. So I'll commit it to memory and I proclaim it by heart when I'm preaching. And it takes sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours to do that, to practice it and get it down so that I can bring that to life for the congregation. But in doing that work, I'm really digging into the scripture and paying attention to what do we need to notice here. And as I'm communicating it to people, how are the people standing? How are they speaking to each other? How are they saying these words? What's the emotion in the moment? And trying to embody it in that way is an incredibly important part of my life. And so even now that I'm running for Congress, in addition to doing the other things I do, I'm still preaching because it helps me to feel God's presence and hear that direction that I need in my life.
So we had a prior guest who was a rabbi, but his intention was to become a politician, and he changed his career. So you are a minister, and now you're a politician. What made you? And Iowegians take their politics very seriously. It's very important.
Yes.
So what made you decide to jump into that at the state level to start with?
I think it's all a calling. I've lived out my calling in a lot of different ways. But I just really started paying more attention to what was happening at the state capitol, in part because my state senator invited me to come pray. Every day there's prayer in the House and the Senate, and I went to share a prayer, and I started paying more attention to what was happening in that building, and I started showing up more. So when I'd see things in the news, it would catch my attention. A lot of things I didn't like what I saw, with the things that I was very concerned about. So underfunding our public schools. I was very concerned about gun violence. And so I would show up with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense and started actually advocating at the Capitol and talking to my legislators. And then I'm really concerned about reproductive rights. And so I was showing up at the Capitol. It was the first time that the state tried to ban abortion at 6 weeks. And I saw my state senator across the rotunda. And so I ran over to him and said, what would happen to a woman that has an ectopic pregnancy if this passes? And he said, what's that? And I was so shocked that he didn't understand some of those pretty common pregnancy complications that happen pretty early in the pregnancy, and what the risks would be. He didn't even have a clue. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is acceptable anymore. I don't think we can help educate him. I think we just need to replace him. And I realized it wasn't appropriate to ask someone else to step up in that way if I wasn't willing to. And so that's when I started really thinking about what would it mean to run for office. And it's a really hard thing to step up and do. Uh, but we need good people with a lot of different experiences. And being a good elected leader means you show up and you listen, and you are really mindful of the impacts of the votes you take. And I was like, I can do that. I have the skills to do that and do it well.
Can we talk about being Christian and being pro-choice?
Yeah. For me, when you look at the scriptures, the issues that you see coming up again and again, um, the proper use of our resources and our wealth. Are we caring for the poor? Are we sharing with our neighbors? Welcoming the stranger, feeding the hungry, and helping the sick. And so caring for the sick for me means really centering the patient in that moment and making sure that they have real choices, that their voice and their situation is honored, and that I really think these are medical decisions that are between the patient and a physician, and that politicians should not be inserting themselves in it, especially politicians who have no idea what it's like to be pregnant or complicated circumstances that surround pregnancy. And so, as a person of faith, I take the pro-life position very seriously and say, if this is very important to us to honor life, how can we do that through state policy? We can make sure that healthcare is accessible for all people so that pregnancies are planned and that they are healthy and that families have good social supports, food, housing, education. I mean, those things are incredibly important for families to have fullness of life. Those are the things that help prevent unplanned pregnancies. Those are the things that reduce the number of abortions and help pregnancies to be planned and healthy. Those are the things we can do to make a difference. And I think those are areas that we can really come together on, even if we disagree on abortion and how the law impacts that.
I'll vote for you.
I know it gets you to move to Iowa.
Because I know every vote counts there.
It does. It really does.
Just everything you've seen in your life, everything you've done, everyone you've helped. I think about, children who could be dying, women who have suffered abuse. And, we always talk about food insecurity. I mean, it just means people are hungry. The things that you've seen, how are you going to tackle any of this when I hope you get there?
Yeah. I'm always surprised at the opportunities I find when I jump into a new calling. There are a lot of roles I've taken on, and of course, you don't understand all of the aspects and all of the challenges you'll face. But I know that I have the resources I need to figure it out. And I've got a lot of wonderful people to support me in the process. And so I'm really encouraged. I've been meeting members of Congress, and there are a lot of really good people who are showing up for the right reasons, who are working very hard that I can learn from. I have an incredibly supportive family. There's a lot of challenges with being a congressional representative from Iowa because I have to be in DC a lot of the week. But my husband, and my kids, they understand how important it is. But it's so incredibly important that we work on lowering costs for our neighbors to make sure that life's affordable because a lot of people are struggling to make ends meet. We have to find a way to make health care affordable, accessible, and really high quality for everyone because that's just a basic need for all of our neighbors and it impacts every aspect of our lives. And we've got to work really hard to make sure that we are caring for our neighbors in terms of good schools and good opportunities and clean water. I mean, these are all issues that are very close to Iowans' hearts. And we have a lot of opportunities at the federal level. I look at government as a way that we work together to do big things. I mean, ideally, that's what it should be. It's how we solve problems together. And there's so much power when people work together. Currently, I work for a food pantry network. I work with all these diverse religious communities on the issue of food insecurity. And food is one of those places that we can bring people together. Every culture, every religion values food, hospitality, caring for the poor. And so, despite a lot of differences, we've got that opportunity to work together. And there are so many people in the community that care, and we're able to do really powerful things.
So what's the difference between running for state senate as opposed to running for Congress?
It's just a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger. So, my state Senate district is about 74,000 people. And
So
a
10
congress-
times as many.
yeah, a congressional district's about 800,000. So it's a lot more territory, and it's a much more expensive campaign for sure. State legislative races have gotten pretty expensive, but Congress is on a whole different level. But it's a lot of the same skills. It's a lot of the same process. It's about introducing yourself to the voters. It's about showing up and connecting with different constituencies. It's about, getting that message across and also showing people the hope that's possible when they participate in the electoral process. I think a lot of people have gotten very frustrated. They're sick of government. They can see how it's not working and they've given up or they've checked out or they're just so overwhelmed with their lives. They don't have time to be thinking about these things. And so you have to find a way to break through some of that and to connect. And that's a challenge. So in my state legislative races, I knock tens of thousands of doors with volunteers, almost 10,000 by myself each cycle. And, that was how I showed up. Can't do that with 800,000 people. I can show up for a lot of people, but it means a lot more TV and digital ads and mail and showing up with staff and volunteers.
You are doing quite a bit to restore my faith in God and in politics, which has been sort of lacking. Okay, this is my last question. Are
Okay.
you going to win?
You know, I feel really good about our opportunity here, and the campaign's been going really well. We have a lot of grassroots support. I've run 3 back-to-back highly competitive, tough races in Republican districts, and I've won them all. So I have a good record, and it's because lots and lots of people have helped me, and we work together to make this possible. Built some really strong relationships. That's the foundation of everything going forward, and we're in a really good position to win this race. And, um, you know, it comes back to the skills I learned as a hospital chaplain, as a minister. It's also connected to the work I do in the community that's not inherently political. It's just about connecting and relationships. People, they need to know that they have someone who cares about them, representing them in Washington. And that's really, really important to me. And I think that's why we're seeing polling showing me defeating the incumbent and the seat being labeled as a toss-up, because we've made such a strong connection with the community over the years through these races, but then also in my other work. And people know that I'm in this because I care about them and I want to help make things better. And the incumbent is pretty vulnerable. He said he was going to do all these things. He said he was going to lower costs for people, and costs have just kept going up. He hasn't shown up for folks, and Iowans really expect their elected leaders to be there for them, and he hasn't held a single town hall since he started.
Oh. Well, there's a lot of pressure on both parties because the House is so tight. So I hope hope this doesn't get an ugly race. So how are you going to manage that if it gets messy?
Yeah.
'Cause that's not. I can tell that's not going to be. You're not going to play dirty.
You're not
Yeah.
going to
Well,
relish that. Yeah.
we need to be honest about what we've seen, and the way that things are. but it's important that my campaign is true to who I am. And I am not the typical politician. I'm a community servant. And I'm here to help. And I'm here to make things better. And we're going to focus on the good that we can do together, and the positive changes we can make. And that has been incredibly important in every race I've run in the past. We need to help people have hope that government can be about people working together to make our community stronger, healthier, more successful. And that's what government should be doing.
That's what faith does. Will you come back when you win?
I'm glad to come back anytime. It's lovely to visit with you all. And I think it's really important that we do talk about faith and politics. A lot of people need help doing that. They need practice. And we can have good boundaries when it comes to faith. I think it's an important part of who we are. And our beliefs, our values, whether they're religious or not, they're always a part of how we engage in the world. And we should be able to talk about that together.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
So if you lived in Iowa, you'd vote for her?
I would vote for her for sure.
I would vote for her. And then coming up, we have yet another wise woman.
I think she's the ultimate wise woman. No offense to the others, but Marianne Williamson is a powerhouse, and every time I've been around her, I literally am like, I feel like my perspective on the world is altered because she's just so insightful and not anything with like common thing. She thinks differently than other people do.
I mean, also was in politics, ran for president, twice, written so many books, started Project Angel Food here in LA, feeding people who were dying of AIDS so many years ago and still feeding people in need. And I've learned everything I know about the book, A Course in Miracles, through Marianne. And some of the things that you learn, like, and she'll say this, and it doesn't hit me until way later, because she is that wise and that deep. But she has said things to me like, you're not afraid of your darkness, you're afraid of your light. You're afraid of what good you can actually do. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then later it hits me, and it's like, well, it's true. People do kind of make themselves smaller. And how a miracle is just a shift in perception. Meaning if you just see something differently, it's really different. Anyway, wait till next week. Marianne will say it a lot more clearly than I will.
All right. So thank you for another episode. If you liked us, please give us good ratings, good reviews, and share with a friend.
And maybe follow us on Instagram, Chasing Faith Pod, because I would like to hear more about your faith journey. I think Jason would too. And also, just come chase faith with us.